Have you ever just looked up at the night sky and wondered, what's it all about? Well, we're about to dive into a story about a night when the stars literally fell, and the one person who thousands believed saw it coming. Okay, so picture this. It's the year 1833. There's no TV, no internet, nothing like that. And suddenly, in the middle of the night, the sky just explodes with a silent, brilliant fireworks show. I'm not talking one or two shooting stars. We're talking thousands per hour, just raining down. For some people, it was the most beautiful thing they had ever seen. For others, it was absolutely terrifying. But here's the really wild part. A lot of people felt like this wasn't a surprise at all. They believed it was a sign, one that was pointed out by a humble farmer who'd spent years searching for answers in just one book. So how on earth did this all get started? To figure that out, we need to meet our main character, William Miller. Now, he wasn't some famous scholar or a powerful preacher. Nope. First and foremost, he was a farmer with a really curious mind and a very, very big question. So who was this guy? Well, William Miller was a hardworking, honest man, respected by pretty much everyone in his town. And get this, his dad was a captain in the American Revolution. Miller never went to college, but he absolutely loved to read and study. But he had this kind of secret struggle. He thought the Bible was, well, confusing. He just couldn't make sense of it, and for a long time, he kind of doubted it was even true. I mean, this slide really shows you the huge change in his thinking. Before he started his deep study, he saw the future as just this dark, scary nothingness. He called the idea of just ceasing to exist a cold and chilling thought. But after his journey into the Bible, everything flipped. God felt like a friend, the Bible was suddenly full of hope, and he found a sense of peace about it all. And this feeling, right here, is what really kicked everything off. He felt lost, like something was just deeply wrong, both in the world and inside him. But he couldn't put his finger on what it was. He was a guy who needed a real, solid answer he could actually count on. And so, William Miller decided to become, well, kind of like a detective. His mystery, the Bible, and his mission, to solve it for himself once and for all. He made this really simple but powerful promise to himself. He decided he wouldn't rely on what other people said the Bible meant. Nope, he was going to start at the very beginning, in Genesis, and read it verse by verse. And he promised he wouldn't move on to the next verse until the one he was on made complete sense to him. So, he set up some ground rules for his investigation. Rule 1, start fresh. Forget everything you think you know. His only tools were the Bible itself and something called a concordance, which is basically a super dictionary for Bible words. His big idea was that the Bible could explain its own mysteries. If a symbol showed up in one place, he'd hunt it down somewhere else to figure out what it meant. So he was using the Bible to decode the Bible. And you know what? It worked. I mean, it really worked. After 2 years of this intense study, the book that had always seemed so confusing and full of contradictions suddenly just snapped into focus. He said it became a new book to him, totally clear and exciting. All the fog had just lifted. So this detective work led him deep into the Bible's ancient prophecies. And in there, he believed he found a massive timeline, a kind of secret code that had been hidden in its pages for thousands of years. This verse right here was the central clue. It's from the book of Daniel, and it talks about 2,300 days. But what on earth did that even mean? I mean, 2,300 days is only about 6 years. That didn't sound very epic. Miller knew there had to be more to the story. He believed he found the key to crack the code. By comparing different verses throughout the Bible, he discovered a principle. In Bible prophecy, one symbolic day often stands for one literal year.
So what did that do to the 2,300 days? Well, it blew the timeline wide open. Suddenly, it wasn't just 6 years. It was a massive prophecy spanning 2,300 times years. This was a huge timeline, covering most of known human history.
Okay, now here's where it gets really amazing. Using other clues in the Bible, he found a starting point for this huge timeline, the year 457 BC, which was when a Persian king gave the command to rebuild Jerusalem. And from there, the math started lining up. The prophecies pointed to key events, like the baptism of Jesus. And when he followed that timeline all the way to the very end, 2,300 years from that starting point, it led him to the year 1844. Can you just imagine him? A farmer, in his study,
back in 1818, looking at all his charts and his calculations. To him, the evidence was undeniable. He believed the Bible was pointing to a massive, world-changing event that was going to happen in his own lifetime, in about 25 years.
You know, for years, Miller actually kept this all to himself. He was hesitant to share it, but eventually he did, starting around 1831. And then, just 2 years into his preaching, something absolutely incredible happened that took his message from quiet country churches straight into the national spotlight. See, Miller and the people listening to him had been reading prophecies that they believed were signs of the times. And one of the most dramatic signs, one that Jesus himself mentioned, was that the stars would fall from heaven. And then on this one specific night, November 13, 1833, it happened, the great meteor shower. I mean, the timing was just unbelievable. Miller had been telling people to watch for signs, and now the sky itself was putting on the most spectacular show anyone could remember. And look, this wasn't just some fringe idea. This quote is from a major newspaper, the New York Journal of Commerce, the very next day. They weren't sure what to make of it all, but even they pointed out that it looked exactly like what the Bible had described. It really made people think. Before this night, Miller's message was interesting, right? But after, well, now it felt urgent. Those falling stars gave his preaching this incredible weight. And suddenly, thousands upon thousands of people were listening very, very intently to what this farmer from New York had to say. So think about it. What started as one man's personal mission to understand a confusing book had now just exploded into this massive public movement, and all because he decided to take the Bible seriously and just read it for himself. I mean, the impact was just huge. He went from talking to his neighbors to speaking to these enormous crowds in big cities. Pastors from all different kinds of churches were inviting him to come share what he'd found, and he never asked for a penny for it. In fact, he spent his own money to travel and preach because he believed the message was that important. She had started a national conversation. So it all comes back to this: one farmer, one book, and one really big question. William Miller's story is just this powerful reminder of what can happen when one person's dedicated search for the truth ends up sparking something so much bigger, inspiring thousands of other people to start searching too.